Hey, welcome back to the Python series for episode 5. We're doing loops today. Let's get started. A loop is basically a block of code that can be repeated. There are two main kinds of loops, a conditional loop and a count control loop. We'll start with conditional loops. So this is our IDLE shell, and for this lesson we'll be working with a new file instead of the IDLE shell. So let me just pull that up for you. This is our new file. You can access new files from File, New File. So for the while loop, we use the keyword while. A while loop is a conditional loop. And if you remember from the previous episode, we learned that conditions can return true or false. A while loop can only run while a condition is true. So let's try out a program. So let's set the variable x as 4, and now we will write our while loop. So you write while, then we put our conditional statement. While x is less than 10, we want x to be output, and then we want x to be incremented by 1. So increment actually means when you increase a variable by a certain number in each repetition. So this is called incrementing. There actually is another way to write this. We can write an increment as x is plus equals to 1. So in this case we are incrementing by 1. You can also have, if we were doing increment by 2, we would do x plus equals to 2 and so on. That's how incrementing works. When the program exits the loop, or when the loop terminates, we want this output message to come. X is now 1 less than 10. Basically what this loop is doing is once it reaches a number that's less than 10, and it cannot be equal to 10 because our condition is x is less than 10. So when x reaches 1 less than 10, the loop terminates. So let's save this file and try it out. Okay, now we will run, and you can see it runs in the IDLE shell. So here we started at x equals to 4. So we set x as 4 and it output that first. Then after that it reached the first increment, so x became 5. Then it repeated itself and went x equals to 6, and repeated again, x equals to 7, x equals to 8, x equals to 9, and it stops at 9 because if you add 1 to 9 it's equal to 10, and 10 is not less than 10. So x is now 1 less than 10 will be our output because the loop has terminated. Now we'll try out count control loops. In a count control loop, a block of code can be repeated for a specified number of times. For count control loops, we use the keywords for and in. Let's try this out in our IDLE shell. So we said that for count control loops, we use the keywords for and in. Keywords for count controlled loops. So we'll start by typing the for keyword along with the variable y in, and then we have range 0 to 5. So range is actually a built-in function of Python, similar to how print is a built-in function. So what range does is it picks up a list of numbers from 0 till 5. So in this case we're putting in the two parameters 0 and 5. So it'll give us numbers like 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Notice that 5 is not included. So we actually have 5 numbers here, but 5 is not included. So range has an inclusive lower bound and an exclusive upper bound. Then we will print y. So what this program is going to do is that in the first repetition, y will be set to 0. Then in the second repetition, the value of y will be overwritten by this value. Then in the next repetition, it will be overwritten by 2, 3, and 4. So let's test this program to see exactly what it does. So we save the program, and as you can see, our repetition started from 0, printed 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you can see that the range function made our loop repeat 5 times starting at 0. If we need to stop the loop at a certain point for whatever reason, we can terminate it using the break keyword. In this example, we have the variable a, assign the value 20, and then we have our while block of code. So the while loop is following the condition a is greater than 5. That means this loop will continue to iterate and continue to repeat as long as a is greater than 5. So the first thing it will do is output a. Then it will check if a is equal to 7. If a is equal to 7, the loop will stop, and then we continue with the decrementing of a. So decrement means we are reducing a. Decrementing is basically just the opposite of incrementing. So in this case, we're decrementing by 1. After this program or block of code ends, we have the output. The rest of the program continues here. So basically, this is to show you that even after the while loop is terminated, it does not mean the program is terminated. It'll just continue after that. So let's test out this program in our IDLE shell and see how it works. So now let's test out that break keyword. So we're using the keyword break, and our program was a is assigned 20. Then we write our condition. So while a is greater than 5, we're outputting a, and then we're checking if a is equal to 7, and if it is, we break or we terminate the loop, and then we decrement a. And again, like before, you can rewrite this as a is minus equal to 1, similar to increment, which is plus equals to 1. And after this program terminates, or this loop terminates, we're going to output print the rest of the program continues here. So whatever your program is will continue even after the loop is terminated. When the loop is terminated, it does not mean the program is terminated. It just means that the block of code, which is this one, has ended. So let's test this out. So let's run that program, save it, and here we go. Start from 20, we are decrementing a by 1 every time. When it reaches 7, it stops, and the rest of the program continues here. So you saw how the break keyword works. Now we're going to try something else, and this keyword is called the continue keyword. If for some reason you need to skip a character in an iteration, you use the continue keyword right here. In this example, the variable a is incrementing by 1, and then if it reaches the number 10, then it'll skip 10 and continue with the rest of the program. So now let's test out our continue keyword program. So we assigned a as 7. Then we said while a is less than 20, which means as long as a is less than 20, our loop will continue. So then we'll increment a. So a plus equals to 1. We're incrementing by 1. Incrementing by 1. And then we'll say if a is equal to 10, we're going to skip it, so we'll use the continue keyword. Continue. And then we'll output a. And now let's test the program. So run module, and we'll say okay. And as you can see right here, we started from 8, then we went to 9, and then we skipped 10, and then we moved on to 11. Now notice the difference between the programs we did earlier, where we outputted the variable first and then continued with the increment, like we did over here. We outputted x first and then we incremented it. So in those loops, we actually outputted the first value. However, in the loop over here, since we outputted A after the increment, it means we won't be outputting the first value of A before we increment it. So that's why the loop started with 8 and not with 7. So now we'll move on to the final part, which we will be testing out a slightly more complicated program using all the concepts we learned. So when we make text-based games in Python, we usually allow the user to end the program by using an input. So similarly, we can use an input from the user to end an infinite loop. So the keywords for an infinite loop are going to be while and true. So how do we write this program? First, we start off with while true. Now, while true is an infinite loop because true is a condition that is always true. So we'll ask the user to now input a choice. So we'll make a variable choice, and we'll use the input command, and we'll say enter y to exit, and we'll enter n to continue. And you can have whatever program you want after the infinite loop in order to continue. So we actually keep all the programs to be continued inside the while loop. So we'll do more complicated text-based games later on. So for now, let's just focus on how to make this loop. So here you can see I've introduced a new built-in function called .upper. Now .upper converts anything before the dot to uppercase. So that will make it easier for our program to recognize the user's input. So for example, if a user was to enter small y instead of capital Y, we would be able to convert that to capital Y in order for the program to accept it. So what we'll be using is if choice is equal to y, then we'll break the while loop. So we'll end the infinite loop. Else if the choice is equal to n, which will be if we want the user to continue, so we'll pass. And we can have one more condition. If the user does not enter something that's either yes or no, we can have an invalid message. So you'd say invalid entry, loop continues. And it'll ask you to re-enter your input. So let's test this out and see how it works. So we'll run the program and save it, and here we go. So let me just make this smaller for you to see it. So here we have, it's asking us to input y or n. So say for example I entered x, it was invalid. If I enter h, it's invalid. If I type n, it continues. If I type y, however, it exits the loop. So that was how you use the break statement to end an infinite loop. That was all for today's episode. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for episode 6. Bye!